In the next session, we have a talk by Jataayu, Tamil scholar and exponent of Hindu thought on the evolution of Ramayana narratives across time and space.
Good evening, Jai Sri Ram. I thank Alo and the entire PLF team for putting a wonderful celebration of arts and ideas in the name of Pondy Lit Fest. Wonderful it has been. Let me start with a story. So, we all know Ramayana. So, Rama is getting ready to go to the forest. So, he comes to the palace, he comes to Sita and informs that, see, to establish the pratigna of my father, Kaikeyi Ma has commanded me, I am going to the forest. Here, so you please stay here and take care of your mothers-in-law and everyone. And then we all know this. Sita says, how can I do this? I mean, I am like your shadow. I will follow you. Then Rama tells him, do you know what a forest is? What are the difficulties in a forest? So there is this big debate going on between Rama and Sita. Rama gives a lot of reasons why Sita should not come to forest. And at one point Sita says, see, in every Ramayana I know, Sita always follows Rama. She never stays in Ayodhya. Then Rama agrees. Okay, I don't have further arguments. And she takes Sita. Cute little story. So this story is from a folk version of a Ramayana. This is quoted by the great author A.K. Ramanujan in one of his notoriously famous essays, the 300 Ramayanas. And there was a big controversy about this, if you remember, a few years back, including it in the curriculum and all that. Now, when you hear this story, the first thing that comes to your mind is that there may be many Ramayanas, but there are some things which never change, like Sita accompanying Rama, right? So, you take this story first to see the timelessness of Ramayana. You never know when it began. And second, some things never change in it. And the grand narrative called Ramayana has been there in our country, unifying our country. But unfortunately, A.K. Ramanujan takes a different thing. Being a postmodernist, what he comes up is that there are really no grand narratives, right? So every cultural, civilizational narrative and story needs to be deconstructed. So for him, there is nothing called a Ramayana that is standard. It is something like a wiki page, which everyone comes and edits and puts whatever he wants. So this is how this kind of talking about multiple Ramayanas has led to. So this poses problems for many of us. I mean, if you are a common Hindu, every Hindu child grows up with Ramayana. Or if you are a Bhakta, a Rama Bhakta at that. Or if you are an assertive Hindu, who wants to uphold Dharma. Or if you are a Hindu narrative creator. Or if you are a researcher and academic researching on Indian culture, this question always bothers you. There are so many Ramayanas. Which is correct? Which is wrong? Right? So in this multiplicity, there are issues of antiquity, authenticity, relevance, purpose. So it's a very complex problem to comprehend. Not just with Ramayana, in some sense. This is true with many things in Hindu Dharma, many practices, many stories, many ideas. And in fact, in Hindu Dharma itself, there is so much multiplicity, and which one to take, which one to reject, and what is correct, and all this. So hopefully, at the end of this talk, some framework will emerge which might help you and guide you. And due to paucity of time, I will be making many conclusive remarks without giving the background or research or study behind it. Okay? But if any of you are interested, please contact me offhand. I will be happy to provide all the pointers and every other material. Now, is there anything called absolute reference for Ramayana? Yes, Valmiki Ramayana, right? So the centrality of Valmiki Ramayana is Absolutely, there is no ambiguity about it. It is the primary source for Rama's story. So, every other re-narrator of Ramayana unambiguously says Valmiki is the first narrator and pays obeisance to Valmiki. And he has been called Adi Kavi in our culture. And there has been some baseless theories that Ramayana was a oral tradition before Valmiki and he collected it and made it into a book like the Homeric epics. But we don't have any internal evidence in the Indian tradition to support such theories. Okay? So just like Valmiki is called Adi Kavi, Ramayana has been called Adi Kavya in our tradition. Right? So it is the first literary text of our civilization, and this text is called Arsha. Arsha means that one which comes from a rishi. Okay? So it is Kavya because it was written by a Kavi. It is Arsha because it was given by a rishi. And if you, in terms of, and it is also Itihasa, meaning it's a historical narrative because of its aitihasic character. So it is not an imaginary story. It was the story of some people who lived in real life and put into writing by a great Kavi Rishi who was contemporaneous with the characters appearing in the story. So these three things are very important: the Kavya, Arsha text and Itihasa. So these three things apply only to Valmiki Ramayana and not to any other text that came later. And chronologically, if you see the core Valmiki text, which we call, it immediately follows the Vedic Samhitas, for example. So when we, I'm sure all of you know that Vedas have 4 portions, right? Samhitas are Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishads. So Samhitas are the mantras of the Vedas. And anyone who has read the Valmiki Ramayana, even a casual reader, will observe that it is closest to the Vedic Samhitas. In fact, there are some simple Vedic rituals in Ramayana, but nothing of the elaborate ritualism that got developed later in the Brahmanas. It has some very simple philosophical ideas, very, very not even remotely connected to the complex and sophisticated philosophical debates that you see in the Upanishads or Sankhya philosophy. So obviously it is clear that it predates all of them. And in fact, in the text, only 3 Vedas are mentioned: Rig, Yajur and Sama, and not Atharva. So which means that it was composed at a time when Atharva Veda was not even brought into the ambit of Vedic canon. So such is the antiquity of the core Valmiki text. So what is this? What does this phrase core Valmiki text signifies? So it is the Ayodhya Kanda, Aranya Kanda, Kishkindha Kanda, Sundara Kanda, Yuddha Kanda, the core books of the Ramayana, and the initial chapters of the Bala Kanda, and not all the side stories that have cropped into it. So this is what there is a scholarly consensus among many scholars that this is the thing that can be called as a core Valmiki text, and it's an integral text. And now there is the later chapter called Uttarakanda or Uttara Ramayana that describes all the events after Rama becomes the king, right? So banishment of Sita to the forest, the killing of the Shambhuka and all that. So that portion, it has been, there has been a lot of studies on this topic, and there is again a huge number of scholars have called it as later addition. And not just Indologists and academic scholars, even traditional scholars. For example, Dr. R. Rangan, who is a traditional Vedic scholar and he runs a Gurukulam and Ashram in Bengaluru. He has written a book called Uttarakanda with a question mark. It's in the title. Last year, it's like a 400-page book where he gives unassailable arguments to establish why it is a later edition. And even some of you who are in the habit of listening to traditional Ramayana discourses, it always stops with the Pattabhisheka of Rama, right? And it never, traditionally we never tell the story of what happened after that, though a text, some portion exists. So, this Ramayana was composed and got propagated as a written text, not just as some oral tradition. It is very important. Vedas remain oral tradition till today. Why? Because they have a intonation, they have swara and everything, very amenable to oral tradition. But the core Valmiki text has about 20,000 shlokas, and it is impossible for someone to propagate it orally. And the last line of the Ramayana, the last sargas, last shloka, says, Lekhayantiha e naraha. Whoever commits this into writing, they will attain good state, it says. In the first chapter, Phalashruti, it says, Patan dvijova grishabhatva. Whoever reads it, the word Patan is used. So, if a Brahmana reads it, he will become a Vedic Pandit. If a Kshatriya reads it, he will gain victory. If a Vaishya reads it, he will become rich. If a Shudra reads it, goods will come to him, good things will come to him. So, even when at the dawn of our Indian civilization, Ramayana, the text got created, and the Rishi made it, he made it an asset which all the four Varnas could own and read directly, not just through a mediatory. So, this is very important to understand. And coming to the content of the Ramayana itself. So, it is, if you read Valmiki Ramayana, you will find that it is essentially a human story. The emphasis is totally on what we call as universal human values. And the divinity of Rama and Sita just emerges in a very subtle form at the very end of the epic. In fact, after Ravana is killed, all the devas come in the sky and they start praising Rama. And then Rama says, Brahma says, Rama, oh Rama, you are Narayana and all that. Rama replies, Atmanam Manusham Manye, Ramam Dasharathatmajam. I consider myself as a human son of Dasharatha. That's what he says. And all through Ramayana, Rama is compared with different Vedic deities. He is like Indra, Agni, Varuna, Soma, Rudra, for different qualities. Okay? And finally, he emerges as, once you read the epic, somebody, a human embodiment of all the great Vedic values. Because if you go by Sri Aurobindo's line of thought, all the Vedic deities are nothing but inner powers. And here is the story of a human who represents all those great inner powers. And that's what Valmiki Ramayana is. So, there have been many pathas of Valmiki Ramayana. I mean, this is just to, like recensions, right? The northern, southern manuscripts have been collected from multiple places. And there is a critical edition for Valmiki Ramayana also. The Mahabharata one is very popular, but there is one for Valmiki Ramayana also, published by Baroda University. But the important thing to notice is that the variations across manuscripts in Valmiki Ramayana are very, very less compared to the Mahabharata. So, which actually means that the text was preserved with a lot of integrity for quite some time. Now, in the post-Valmiki era, how the Ramayana evolved. The immediate thing that comes to our mind is Mahabharata. So there Rama's story is again narrated in the Vanaparva. A rishi tells the story to Pandavas. Rama is your example. He lost his kingdom and then regained. It's called Ramopakhyana. And even the name of Valmiki as the giver of Ramayana is mentioned in the Mahabharata. So we see a cultural continuity there. And in the era immediately following that, obviously the non-Vedic traditions, the Buddhism and Jainism evolved. And by the time these religions came into the scene, Ramayana story had already become very, very popular. So in Buddhism, there is this Dasharatha Jataka, which is part of the Buddhist text Tripitaka. So in the text, the Buddha himself says that in the previous birth, he was Rama Pandita in the Ikshvaku clan. So that's the name, Rama Pandita. So as usual, he goes to the forest, and Bharata goes and pleads Rama to come back. And then there is a big dialogue between Rama and Bharata, where Rama says, the transient nature of the world and the importance of dharma. And those portions in the Buddhist text are exactly like, even the words are taken from the Valmiki Ramayana. Okay? And in that text, very strange, because Buddhists were very ahimsak people. There is no war. So Rama completes his vanavas and comes back, becomes the king. So such a tasteless version of Ramayana it is. But it has another strange thing. Sita is Rama's wife as well as his sister, as per this epic, which is a very strange thing in the Indian tradition. And the scholars, and this is the only Ramayana that says such a crazy thing. So the scholars who have studied this says that this could be due to the influence of foreign invading tribes like Shakas, who had such practices among them, and that got sneaked into this Buddhist text. And when you come to Jainism, the Jain Mahabharata, the Jain Ramayana, which is called Paumacharita, that arose in the 3rd century, written by Vimala Suri. So here, Rama is a Jain master. He visits lot of Jain tirthas. Ravana is also a Jain. He is a pure vegetarian. Okay? The only fault in him was that he could not control his senses. He became very lusty and then kidnapped Sita. And it is Lakshmana who kills Ravana in the Jain version, and because of that he suffers in a hell. Okay? So you can't even kill someone like Ravana as per the Jain doctrine. And eventually he gets liberated by following Jain principles. So this is Vimala Suri's. And Vimala Suri says that this is the true Ramayana, and he doesn't name Valmiki, and says whoever has written the story before got it wrong, and this is correct. So now as we see, so these non-Vedic versions do not have any literary merit. They are absolutely propagandist piece of texts appropriating the already popular Rama story, and they also introduced some perversions in the process. And they are a minuscule in the big ocean called Ramayana. But unfortunately, our cultural Marxist scholars and historians gave over importance to this Buddhist and Jain Ramayana text. If you remember, in the 80s and 90s, when the Rama Janmabhoomi movement was picking up, there were huge debates in the Indian media citing these two obscure texts by authors like Romila Thapar and others. Now coming to the Vedic stream, in the post-Valmiki era, the Vedic tradition, Ramayana grew in two streams. So one stream is the Kavya or literary stream, in which the original aspect of this being a very human story was preserved. So the love, dharma, universal human heroism. So how a hero overcomes his misery. So these kavyas were oriented in this idiom. The other stream within the Vedic tradition can be called a Puranic stream, or a theological or religious stream. So in the first Kavya stream, the divinity of Rama is not erased, but it is just there as a subtle thing, right? So the rasa of the human story is given prime importance, and the divinity emerges out of it rather than blatantly being stated. But in the religious and theological stream, it starts with the divinity of Rama, okay, with that as the main theme, and then reinterprets the entire epic in that spirit. So coming to the Kavya stream, we had this first it started in Sanskrit in the 1st century to 9th century. We have the glorious Sanskrit kavyas, the great, and natakas. The great poet Bhasa, who has written a lot of Mahabharata plays, he wrote 2 Ramayana natakas, Pratima Nataka and Abhisheka Nataka. Kalidasa, the Mahakavi, wrote Raghu Vamsham, Raghu being an ancestor of Rama. So the story of all the Raghuvamsha kings comes in this kavya. And you know, though the kavya is named after Raghuvamsha, the six chapters are devoted to tell the story of Rama, and only 2 chapters are devoted for the story of Raghu. So the Kalidasa has also written a great Ramayana kavya within Raghuvamsha. And then we have Bhoja, the great Kavi, written Champu Ramayana in a mix of prose and poetry. And Bhavabhuti wrote Uttara Ramacharita and Mahavira Charita. And so through all these kavyas and natakas, Ramayana comes into the performing arts tradition. So the Ramayana plays are staged, it enters into music, sculpture and all art forms. In Sanskrit, so till about 9th century, this has been happening. So after 10th, 11th century, it gets into regional languages. And the first glorious kavya in that genre is Kamba Ramayanam in Tamil, written by the great poet Kambar in the Chola era. See, though this kavya arose in the 12th century, it doesn't mean that Rama's story was not known to Tamil people before. In fact, right from the Sangam literature and the Silappatikaram and the Bhakti hymns of Alvars, the Rama story has been repeatedly told in Tamil literature again and again. So much that in Silappatikaram, when the protagonists, Kannagi and Kovalan, they leave their city Puhar, the poet says, the city drowned into so much misery, like what happened when Ayodhya suffered, when Rama and Sita left. See, he gives Ramayana as an example. That means, so the Kamba Ramayanam, as it is called, though the poet named it as Rama Avataram. So it was a culmination point in Tamil literature of Ramayana and not a starting point. And till today, this Kamba Ramayanam remains the most grand kavya in Tamil, and no other kavya has surpassed it. That is its glory. And the poet very closely follows Valmiki, only making some subtle micro changes here and there to embellish the story. Around the same time, in the 13th century, Buddha Gonna Reddy writes Ranganatha Ramayanam in Telugu. And another woman poet, Molla, who was actually a Lingayat, writes another Ramayana again in Telugu. This is south. And then in the far northeast, in Assamia, in 14th century, Madhav Kandali writes his Ramayana in that language. So in these early kavyas, what we see, interestingly, is a transitional phase. So it is between the kavya stream and the religious stream. Okay, so it is not like Rama is fully human, but he is not also fully divine. So that makes these kavyas very beautiful when you read them. Now I will take 2 episodes related to gender and caste to illustrate how this evolution happens. Take Sita Haran. So Sita is kidnapped by Ravana. So how Valmiki describes it? So Ravana catches Sita's plait of hair with her left hand. He grabs her and then lifts her and puts it into his flying car. So the commentators say that Sita actually fainted when Ravana assumes his wild form. So he just literally grabbed her, lifted her and put it into the flying car. And Kambar, who comes so many thousands of years after Valmiki, he doesn't have the heart to describe it like this. Okay? And remember, in the Valmiki Ramayana, the curse for Ravana is such that only when he forces himself upon a woman or he attempts to rape her, his head will be blown into pieces, not by a mere touch. Okay? So Kamban changes this curse a little bit and says that even if Ravana touches any woman against her will, that's it, he is finished. So the way he narrates this episode is Kindon Nilam Yosane Kiyodu Mel, he says. So Ravana doesn't even come near Sita. He actually he breaks the entire Parnashala. Okay? So basically he digs the earth. Along with the Parnashala, he places Sita in his flying car and takes her to Lanka. And when Hanuman goes and sees in the Ashokavana, he sees and he comes and reports to Rama that I saw your Parnashala there. So this is Kamban. So if you see what is the crux of this change. So Valmiki describes it in a very, very realistic way, and he wants the reader to know the pain and suffering of Sita in that state. How much Sita suffered. But still, no sin got accrued to a chaste woman like Sita, though another male person touched her against her wish. So she still remained a pativrata. So this is the message Valmiki wants to convey through this. In fact, Sita explicitly says this. In Sundarakanda, Hanuman offers to take her immediately to Rama. Now that you are suffering here, just sit on my back, I will take you. Then she says, no, this is a shame for Rama. Let Rama come, fight Ravana and then take me. And the second thing, I don't want, out of my own will, I don't want to touch another person's body. And then she says, when I was kidnapped, I was not even in my senses, it was against my will. So I still remain pure. So this is Valmiki's message. But during the times in which Kamban lived, Sita's divinity was already established. And there were these notions about the purity and chastity of woman. And so Kambar, in line with that, he changed his narration. Now you come to still later texts like Adhyatma Ramayana. So here, Rama is like full god and everything, right? So he actually tells Sita that Ravana is going to come in the form of a bhikshu and he is going to kidnap you. And then there is a ritual fire in the Parnashala, the Agni. So Sita enters that Agni and another Maya Sita comes out of it. So it is the Maya Sita which Ravana kidnaps. Okay? And after the war is over, and when Rama speaks very harsh words to Sita. So in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is no such Maya business. It's the real Sita, right? So when Rama utters these very harsh words, he stops. And then Sita says, why should I even live? If you yourself reject me like this. And then she orders Lakshmana to start the fire. And then she says, I will enter the fire. So in those who are in the Valmiki idiom, we always call this as Agni Pravesha. We never call this as Agni Pariksha. Okay? But in all the North Indian Ramayanas, which came later to this age, so there Rama intentionally wants Sita to enter the fire. Why? Because only when the Maya Sita enters the fire, real Sita will come out of it. Okay? So this is the word Agni Pariksha has come because of the change in this narrative. So the Tulsidas also follows the same thing like Adhyatma Ramayana in this episode. The next thing is about the Guha, right? The Nishad Raj whom Rama meets first when he starts for the forest. So in Valmiki Ramayana, he is like a prince. He is the Nishad Raj. And Rama embraces him and he says, Atma Samas Sakha. You are my cherished friend. He says, they talk like equals. And Shabari, who is also a forest dweller, she is mentioned in similar terms. In fact, she is called Siddha, Tapasi, Dharmacharini and all that, with some great adjectives like this in the Valmiki Ramayana. But in the next, in Kamban, so the Guha is like a very small chieftain. Okay, so his body is smelling with fish. So he talks at a distance and talks to Rama. He stands at a distance and talks to Rama. And in much later Ramayanas, he has become Chandala. He is not even a Nishada or a boatman or anything. And like that, the narrative changes. And in case of Shabari, Rama comes to Shabari's ashram and he asks, Kachitte vardhate tapaha. Is your tapasya going on fine? He asks, so how is your yoga going? But in the Adhyatma Ramayana and in Tulasi Ramayana, she says, so here she belongs to the Shabara clan. It is very clearly said that Shabara are forest dwellers, and she became a disciple of the Matanga Rishi, and she is a great tapaswini. But in Adhyatma Ramayana and then in the later Tulasi Ramayana, she says, Adhamu jati mai jadamati bhari. I am of inferior caste. I am a dullard, jadamati bhari. Adhamu say adham ati nari. Shabari says this. So women are lowest of the lowest, and I am a low life even among women. So, oh Rama, I am fortunate to receive you. So that's how the narrative changes. But then, Rama doesn't leave at that. Rama's treatment is exactly the same. So in the later Ramayanas, Rama replies, no. The caste or gender or anything doesn't matter. You are a noble woman. Your bhakti, I am pleased with that. So though there is a change in narrative, through Rama, a positive message is conveyed in this. So that is very beautiful. And the Shabari giving the bitten fruits to Rama, that is not there even in Tulasi Ramayana. Okay? That is there in the Jagmohan Ramayana of Balram Das, which came in the 16th century in Odia language. So, but the beauty of that story, that it is very touching, and it really we feel with our heart. So how much Rama has come down, right? Saulabhya it is called, to accept Shabari's fruit. And Shabari, though the narrative changed and made her a low caste woman, she has become an icon of social emancipation in Hindu civilization till today. So there is Shabari Kumbh happening in many parts of North India, where the tribal communities gather and celebrate her. So this is how the evolution happens. And now let's come to the religious streams. So the first things are the Puranas, right? The first 9th centuries, 10th century, the Puranas have been evolving. 18 Puranas, Ashtadasha Puranas. So in all the Vaishnava Puranas, like Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, Bhagavata Purana, Rama is mentioned as an avatar of Vishnu in a typical Vaishnavite setting. But in the Shiva Purana, Skanda Purana and Devi Purana, so in all these Puranas, Ramayana story is narrated. Okay? So actually Ramayana is there in all the 18 Puranas. So here the regular story comes, but then Rama is made a bhakta of Shiva. So he goes establishes this Rameshwara Shivalinga, which is not there in Valmiki, by the way. Okay? And in the Devi Puranas, he also becomes the bhakta of Devi. So those from Bengal would know about Kritibas Ramayana, which came in the 16th century. There Rama conducts a very elaborate Shakti Puja, and he has with 1,000 blue lotuses, and 999 blue lotuses are offered, and one blue lotus is missing. Then because he is called Kamala Nayan, he wants to pluck his own eyes and offer it as a bali to Durga, and at that point Durga comes and blesses him. See this. So this is a Puranic re-narration. If you see, this is again appropriation of the Ramayana, but by the Hindu schools themselves. The Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktism, everyone appropriates Ramayana because it is the most popular story. This is in a theological setting, and the Puranas have the tendency, as you know, of making everything astronomical, everything cosmic, and everything cyclical. Right? So the notion that Ramayana happened in the Treta Yuga, it is actually Puranic. It doesn't exist in the original the Itihasa setting of Valmiki. Okay? And because there are 4 yugas, and the yugas are repeating, and then so many yugas make a Manvantara, and then it makes a Kalpa, and then there is this Puranic notion that the same things keep repeating in every Kalpa. Okay, so they have this, the Puranas have this bizarre theory that Ramayana keeps happening again and again in every Kalpa. So as a cosmic idea, it is good, But unfortunately, people who are used to this idiom, so they started thinking that actually Ramayana is not a historical thing, but it is going to happen again and again. This kind of world view has caused some big confusion among the mind of Hindus in appreciating the Itihasa character of both Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Actually, nobody talks this in the context of Mahabharata, because the Puranas don't say Mahabharata will happen again and again. Why? Because they chose Ramayana. It is the most popular story. It is so much embedded in people's mind. So because if you apply the same theory, it should come to Mahabharata also, but it's not told. Why? Because, so in a way, this story happening in different yugas again and again, with variations, it gives a license for these religious narrators of Ramayana to tell that, our Ramayana is also somewhat authentic, not just Valmiki, and makes Valmiki as just one version and not as the primary source and the central reference. So in a way, the religious stream has tried to subvert and replace Valmiki over time, and this reaches its peak in Adhyatma Ramayana, which is a very influential text. It has influenced Ramacharita of Tulasidas, the Malayalam Ramayana of Eluthachan, and Bhavartha Ramayana of Eknath in Marathi and all that. So in Adhyatma Ramayana, it is a text that combines Advaita Vedanta and Rama Bhakti together. So here they say that all the emotions that Rama goes through, it is all drama. But in Valmiki, it is all very real. Okay? But in Adhyatma Ramayana, he says he is just playing this out as a Leela. He is never born, he never dies. Rama is Parabrahman and all that. And at the next level, the whole thing becomes symbolic. Rama is Paramatman, Sita is Jivatman. So Ravana is Ajnan, who separates Jivatman and Paramatman, and all this. So the whole story from Itihasa becomes a symbolism just to explain a philosophy. Again, this has caused a lot of confusion. It sounds very nice and sophisticated, but in the understanding of Ramayana, the same goes for Adbhuta Ramayana, Ananda Ramayana, etc. I don't have time to explain them. Similar, theological manipulations. And then in the 17th century, Samartha Ramadasa, he takes Ramayana and Rama Bhakti as a tool to spread Hindu awakening, and he inspires Chhatrapati Shivaji, and the Maratha Empire is born. So here again, with all this theological manipulation, the original heroic spirit of Ramayana comes back, riding on all the religious ideas. And again, Guru Gobind Singh writes his Ramavatar in Punjabi, again bringing out the heroic spirit. So now so far I have been talked about the literary texts, right? So the folk versions is another entire area where there is lot of folk stories about Ramayana, and interestingly many of these folk stories have actually got into the literary texts, okay, over time. See, the squirrel helping Rama, it's actually a folk story, so very popular. And when Ramayana spread outside of India to Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, so many different variations came into the story, but the basic spirit was still kept up. So ultimately, what is our conclusion? How do we handle this thing? So we need to make all Hindus aware of this whole evolution of Ramayana. It is very complex. See, I am sure the heads of many of you are spinning with so much details. I hope I tried to make it very interesting. But it is really very important to know the enormity of this thing to even appreciate. So what is the prescription? So if you are a Hindu, ordinary Hindu, Rama Bhakta, whatever story appeals to you, you take it. See, it is your Rama ultimately, right? So some of these folk stories are good and some of them are actually bizarre if you really read them. But ultimately, if Rama is your guide, the Dharma will guide you to choose the right story, and only that story will appeal to you, and your mind will automatically reject the bad stories. So your Rama and your conscience is your guide. If you are a researcher or a narrative creator, you should be much more rigorous, much more accurate. Always go to Valmiki. If you want to defend something, if there are some defamation about the Ramayana, go to the source and then reply. So I want to end this talk with this great shloka, Dhyana shloka of Ramayana. Valmiki giri sambhuta Rama sagara gamini punat bhuvanam punya Ramayana mahanadi. The great river of Ramayana starts from the mountain of Valmiki, reaches the ocean of Rama, and in its course it purifies the entire world. With that I end. Jai Shri Ram. I can still take questions. Yes.
I have one little question.
Yes. Mike.
If I don't read Sanskrit and say the only language I'm proficient in is English, which version do I read to get closest to the Valmiki's version?
So you read any good translations. See, there are so many. The Gita Press translation is there.
Gita Press.
Yes, there is Bibek Debroy translation.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed the part where you told when real Sita went into the fire and the Maya Sita came out. Which point of the story was that?
Which part of the story? Meaning?
Like when did the real Sita enter the fire to become Maya Sita?
Oh, when Ravana came to kidnap her. At that time, there was fire in her ashram, right? So she entered the fire. The real Sita entered the fire.
She entered. How can she enter the Lakshman Rekha?
No. So the Lakshman Rekha, etc. doesn't come here. That's a different folk version. Okay? So here, the Sita is all divine. See, that narration is from Adhyatma Ramayana, I told you, right? So she knows that Ravana is coming to kidnap her. It makes the story very... See, the problem with all these Adhyatma Ramayana narratives, it kills the entire beauty of the story. Okay? There is simply no rasa into it. That's why I said it's a different stream. So in fact, when I said in the conclusion, for some people, it is the Kavya stream that will appear. Personally to me, it is Valmiki, Kalidasa, Kambar who appeal to me. And this Adhyatma Ramayana, I keep laughing when I read the texts of those stories. But there are people among Hindus who always want complicated things. They are not happy with the simple story of Rama and Sita. The Telugu movies. In fact, I have not told some of the bizarre things in Ananda Ramayana, where Ravana comes right at the start. He even tries to prevent the birth of Rama. He kidnaps Kausalya, he puts her inside a box, and the box is kept inside the belly of a fish, and all this. Okay? But some people are very interested in such bizarre stuff.
Namaskar. So this question is about Ravana. So there is a set of people here calling Ravana as their hero, and they call Ravana as a Tamil. I mean, they mention him as a Tamil person here. Whereas I've also heard that Ravana is from Kashmir. Somebody whom I met said,
okay, so what is the question?
I want clarity from you.
Okay, so
as to what Valmiki specifically says.
So according to Valmiki, Ravana is a Rakshasa. Okay, and in some previous session, I think Amiji mentioned that he was a Brahmana, but actually Valmiki never says that. In the core text of Valmiki, right? Leave Uttarakanda. In fact, though he was born to the Pulastya Rishi, who descends from Brahma, in fact Ravana calls him a Kshatriya. So when Ravana dies, Ravana is dead, then he says, look at this Kshatriya, a great warrior who is dead. So that's it. So no connection with Dravidian, Tamil, Kashmir or anything. So that's all Valmiki says.